gets here, but I first want to thank the witnesses for coming here today, and we will call this subcommittee hearing to order now. We'll start with my opening statement. We will hopefully by the time we get through that, Mr. Pasquarello will be here. We'll move to him and then go to each of you. So good morning again. For the first time in history, more than 1 million people are waiting on Social Security Administration to process their initial disability claim. Let me say that again. That's 1 million people are now waiting. On average, claims are taking 220 days to be decided. That's more than 100 days longer than it was in 2019, and more than 150 days longer than the Social Security Administration, what it defines as a minimum level of performance. The real world consequences for these individuals who are unable to work and wait for their disability decision is devastating. Many of these families and many of these individuals really get hurt by these delays. To help illustrate what the Social Security Administration's claim process looks like from a claimant's perspective, I'd like to submit for the record a statement provided to us by a beneficiary who waited more than a year for a decision that should have taken months, if not weeks. Without objection, I'd like for this statement to be entered into the record. She has a very, very severe condition and was unable to travel, and she was unable to be here to testify. But in place of that, instead of me reading the words and using that, I would like to play a recording of her statement as part of this opening statement. So with that, we will begin the recording.
It was a semi-typical day. I was leaning on the countertop in our hall bathroom, waiting for my 2-year-old to finish going to the toilet. My husband was in the bedroom, sleeping off the previous night's third shift from his job, but had his phone on full blast in case I needed help. Suddenly, the muscles around my ribs cramped and I could barely get air in. I pulled out my cell phone and called my husband and said one quiet word: help. As I went to my knees, I thought to myself, I'm going to die on the bathroom floor in front of my 2-year-old. At that moment, the Social Security Administration had denied my claim for disability, stating that I was capable of work. If my husband hadn't brought my rescue medication, I would have died that day. Stiff person syndrome is an exceptionally rare, literally 1 in a million, permanent and progressive autoimmune neurological condition that the primary symptom is severe muscle cramps and spasticity. The spasms in me have torn multiple ligaments, broken multiple ribs, given me multiple attacks where I cannot breathe, and have left me screaming in agony more times than I can attempt to count. It also affects my central nervous system, causing things like seizures and vision problems. I do my best to complete something productive each day and be a member of my small family, but most of my time is spent asleep, either because of sheer exhaustion or the many medications I have to take each day. The two primary causes of death from stiff person syndrome are spontaneous apneic episodes and suicide. Let me repeat that. I am most likely to die from suffocation or suicide. It took me weeks to complete the Social Security application, both because of the breadth of information required, as well as system errors that would cause entire pages to empty of data. I received many unclear letters in the mail. Each time this occurred, I had to call up to confirm that my application hadn't been lost and that I was still in the queue to be deemed disabled. Stiff person syndrome is on the compassionate allowance list. These are supposed to be the cases where the illness is so severe that there doesn't need to be a wide assessment of validity of disability. However, my case was not treated this way. My case was denied. We were living on savings and a very small private disability insurance payment. Each month, we were calculating how much longer we had to live before the money ran out. I emptied my 401k. We had to pay bills late. We had to delay some treatments for my autistic son. Once my case was finally reassessed, my disability claim was approved and we reached back We received back pay, but my lawyer wasn't paid, and now I have to figure out how to address that issue. I am still awaiting my first monthly payment, but it has taken 15 months. This process can be made better for both employees of the Social Security Administration and claimants by simplifying it.
Wow. Words say an awful lot. I know, I almost wish at this point that we had our district office staffs here to tell story after story after story about what they deal with. And while the Social Security Administration claims it is working to address the backlog, we're seeing things go in the wrong direction. We're spending $100 million to fund outreach efforts aimed at increasing initial disability claims. And while they, on their own, disability claims have been declining on their own. Let me put this in plain English. If the Social Security Administration is unable to keep up with the claims that it has now, but is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get more claims, it doesn't make sense, and it feels like that those dollars should be going to address the issue that is at hand. Over the past 12 years, the Social Security Administration has invested more than $300 million to obtain an up-to-date occupational data and to determine whether a claimant can work a job in today's economy. And although the SSA has acknowledged that this data is more useful and more accurate, they continue to rely on occupational data that is more than 30 years out of date. These are just a couple of examples of how the SSA is making life harder for claimants and making more work for itself. There are many more that we'll hear about today, and I hope that when we're finished with this, we will begin to be able to figure out better solutions so that we can help these claimants and help their families. That's what we should be about doing. So with that, I will yield to my good friend, gentleman from New Jersey and ranking member for this hearing, Mr. Pasquarello. Sir, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr.